Welcome to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Lori Rivers with you, here to help you with your inspirations so you can get those aspirations out into the world. And we are looking at February 2023 in this episode. We'll be doing our patron shout-outs, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that big old full moon in February. Starts off our month that first week, and it packs a wallop, and I'll tell you why at the end of the podcast. All right, let's get going, shall we? And just so you know, we're recording this while I'm live on TikTok. And so this might be a little different episode if you're a listener. So if I sound weird or I go, uh-oh, that's probably why. All right, let's get on with things, shall we? All right, let's look at February, shall we? First, I'm going to give you the rundown of what we're going to see in February of 2023. It is a very active month. So February 5th, the sun is squaring Uranus. And on that same day, we have the Leo full moon. And that's happening in the daytime. That's not forming full late at night. So you'll see it at night, obviously, but it is forming in the daytime. That tells me with the sun square Uranus and a full moon, which means that we'll have a little T-square going on. It's going to be a very eventful day on the mundane. Now, remember, on an individual level, you can have a great day. So I always say that because it's true. Just because the world is facing contention does not mean you cannot have a good day. In fact, I've seen it in a lot of my year ahead readings. We have a very tumultuous year, and yet individuals who are, really dedicated to being deliberate in their life, harnessing their consciousness, they're doing pretty good. Okay, especially if you've lived on the struggle bus at any point in your life, you're quite able to navigate these rocky times. So on February 9th, we have Mercury conjunct Pluto. February 11th, we have Mercury moving into Aquarius. February 16th, we have Venus conjunct Neptune. Now, that is a save the date, folks. And I'll talk about that in a minute. You want to save the date for that Venus conjunct Neptune. February 17th, we have the Sun conjunct Saturn. February 18th, the Sun enters Pisces. February 20th, we have the new moon in Pisces, and Venus will enter Aries that day. So that might be a little more interesting in your love life. Certainly going to be fascinating. We've got some kind of good manifesting energy going on in this time period, even with all the stuff heading towards March. March is going to mark a massive time of change, and it will be a harbinger of the change happening over the next 2 decades. So it's going to be interesting, is all I have to say. So let's talk a little bit about February 16th here, and I'll do more on it as we get closer to it. We've got a couple of episodes that we can sneak in more information. February 16th with Venus conjunct Neptune is a day to really make a wish. Normally, I'm going to tell you, don't make wishes, set an intention and then take inspired action. And with Venus conjunct Neptune, it is a time that you can make a wish and kind of expect that some of it at least is going to come true. Now, if you wish for a pony, you might not get an actual little Shetland pony, but a My Little Pony might show up for you. You can't be too literal when it comes to making wishes in the universe. It's just like when you're asking for a sign, sometimes a sign, a literal billboard, might show up. It depends on how you work with your guidance, but it's a great time to make a wish. If you do any kind of magic or any kind of intuitive work, especially for those of you who do intuitive readings, that's a great day. That's a great day. Your readings will be so on point. So that's pretty interesting. February 17th is going to be an interesting day with the Sun conjunct Saturn. And that new moon in Pisces is going to be interesting. But I'm not going to go into depth on that new moon because we'll do a whole podcast episode just for that, just like I got you prepped for the Leo full moon in the last episode, episode 4 of the Awake Space Astrology podcast. If you didn't listen to that, you want to head over there. Speaking of that full moon, I'm giving a workshop on that on January 29th, this Sunday. And I've got a bunch of people who are going to show up, find out what that means, not just globally, but also for themselves personally, because I'm going to talk about how that's going to impact them per their own unique astrological chart. And so we'll do a quick little walk through where to find that 16 degrees of Leo. 16 degrees of Leo is that full moon. And with it making a T-square to Uranus, well, gosh darn it. That's going to be a day full of surprises, but I think we're kind of used to it. I mean, that's something I talked about earlier in the year, is we're so used to things kind of being, tits up, that's going to continue. And so we don't have the same shock. I think we're more fatigued. At this time. I know everybody's tired of living in historic times, and I'm going to say, suck it up, Buttercup, because that's exactly the times we were born to live in. There's a lot of great illumination, and that T-square can also help us get unstuck. If you are stuck in your head, if you've got some self-esteem issues, this is the time to supercharge your way out of those. Okay. I've told you for 2 years, we cannot luxuriate in the doldrums and really make it through these times. I didn't say we don't process our emotions or process our feelings or deal with our issues. I'm saying don't luxuriate in the doldrums. Okay, because if we are overly attached to the past, if we're overly attached to events that have occurred to us, and we over-identify with that, that's going to make something like this Leo full moon a little hard to handle. And so if you can take it as a way to liberate yourself and your self-esteem, you're going to be in a lot better shape. Okay, that's an important thing. So I want you guys to look to this with some optimism, because not everything that looks kind of wackadoodle on the outside is always a bad thing. It can be stressful to go through, but it doesn't mean that everything's going to be awful all the time. It can be exactly the kind of breaking point that pushes you through to the other side of an issue. And it may not be comfortable, but life really isn't meant to be comfortable. Life is meant to be lived, and living is often uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be a whole lot of suffering. One of my very, very favorite quotes is, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. And I think I just love that, because, yeah, we experience things in life, but it doesn't mean we have to let all of those things define who we are and how we move forward as well. I had a wonderful reading with one of my favorite clients today, and I asked, "How are you?" I tend to ask that at the beginning of every reading, and they were like, "Give me a minute." And they said, "At this moment, I'm doing good. At this moment." And I said, "Wow, what a great way. Live life moment to moment." That's a great way to phrase it. That's a great way to look at it. Moment to moment. If you're trying to telescope and look too far into the future without context, it can really kind of mess you up. We're trying to always plan which is the right way to go and go without mistakes. And, we can't afford that. You miss opportunity by not being in that moment, being aware of the moment, because neurologically, scientifically, we really only have the present moment. We really do. You can look it up. Neil talked about it. You know how I feel about Neil. So, February is an interesting month, and it is the setup for all of the stuff going down in March. And if you want to know about March, go look back through the episodes from December and early January. I've been talking about that, and I'll talk about it at the end of February as well. Okay. But for right now, I want to keep us in the present because that's where we make the decisions that take us forward. And those decisions aren't just about what to buy or what job to take or what kind of educational path we're on. It can be deciding how we're going to address our mindset, how we're going to work on our own responsiveness or reactivity. Those little tiny everyday, often much bigger than we think decisions are what help us move forward into the future. Okay. They're what help us move forward into the future. I guess I didn't get Discord off. That beep beep is my Discord. The Awake Space Astrology Discord. It's a poppin'. It's a poppin', I tell you. Um, Speaking of, I think it's time for a patron shout out, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that's up on deck and why we want to use applied astrology, not just theoretical astrology, and why we don't just want to be up in our heads about it, and why an astrologer who predicts the future would tell you to live in the present moment. But first, let's do some patron shout outs. Time for my favorite part of the podcast, the patron shout out. Man, guys, I am so honored to have you guys supporting the Awake Space Astrology Podcast, having you support all of the astrological information. As you know, I like to love you up and give you discounts and all sorts of goodies because I can't believe there's so many of you. We're well over 700. It's mind-boggling to me, that many of you support my work in the world, and it is my life's work. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's get to a shout out, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Planet of the Month Club. We've had a ton of you upgrade to that, and I cannot believe how wonderful that is. All right, we've got Garnet, Olivia, Allison, Liz, Mina, Jennifer. Let's see. Yadira, James, Stacy, Alexander, Kevin, Karen, Nicole, Angela, Regina, Holiday, Kai, Pat, Rosie, Green Girl, Melody, Amanda, let's see, Coom, Leslie, Ghost Girl, M. Darden, Nina, Stacy K, Nina Maru, Jenny, Heather, Nikki, Megan, Vicky, Julie, Sheila, McKenna, Megan, Morgan, Terry, Aaron, Gabrielle, Sharon, Kayla, Charlene, Ksenia, Lauren, Teresa, Heather, Nick, and Stephanie. Thank you to the newest patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. It's so good to have you here. Make sure you're in the Discord. And for those of you who joined the Planet of the Month Club tier, okay, it's a new tier. You get everything that you had as an astro adventurer, plus the Planet of the Month Club, which I'm so excited about. What do you get? Well, you get a 2-hour class from me once a month. And then in our first class will be February 6th. It'll be a Monday. Okay. It'll be a Monday. I know the graphic says Sunday, but God forbid I get a day and the date to correct all at the same time in something I publish, right? I'm just an astrologer. What do I know? So we're going to have class on this first month. It'll be a Monday. After that, it'll probably be Sundays. And so it'll be on the 6th, and then it'll be recorded. The recording will be up in the Patreon. And then in the Discord is where we'll have discussions. You'll find your office hours with the astrologers. They're just finishing up the schedule for themselves now. They're probably going to do this in pairs to start because it's more fun that way. And then we will have all the homework and journal prompts, everything. That'll be up in Patreon. So you want to be able to check Patreon and in the Discord. Just makes it easier to manage that way. I'll be tagging all of the course material, and we'll put the tags in the Discord so you can find it on Patreon when you're searching, because I know I create a lot of content. All right. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for your support. It means the world to me. Next up, we are going to talk a little bit more about why it's important to be in that present moment and using astrology practically in an applied way instead of just sitting with theories, because that's how a lot of the bad information gets passed around. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of that up next. So I was talking a little bit here on TikTok about how that Uranus square, T-square in that full moon action really shows an opportunity to kind of bust through some blocks, especially when you're hiding your light, because this is a Leo full moon, guys. It's a Leo full moon. You have this opportunity to kind of blow through some blocks. That T-square doesn't mean you'll be blocked necessarily. It can mean you bust through the blocks, okay? But you'll feel blocked to bust through it, okay? And so it's uncomfortable. Squares are uncomfortable. Oppositions are uncomfortable. Full moons can be uncomfortable. And that's why on Sunday the 29th, I'm running the workshop, because I'm going to help people move some of that uncomfortableness, move some of that pressure out of the body, bring tissues. You might cry. You might not cry. You might need to put yourself on mute and do a primal strain. Careful, because you don't want to scare your neighbors. But sometimes we have to move energy, and I'll walk you guys through that process. That'll be the ceremony of clearing up some of those blocks, okay? So that you can be open to receive the bennies of that full moon. You're going to hear a whole lot of people saying, don't manifest on that day. Too late. You set your intentions on the Leo new moon in 2022, okay? And that was like in July, all right? You set your intentions already. They're coming to fruition. So we want to be open to receiving. All right. You don't just set intentions to receive on the full moon. That's not how it works. Okay. So why do we want to be as present as possible? So one of the things that really shapes our reality is our perceptions. And that's a neuroscience fact. Okay. It's not just Lori saying so. You can Google it. All right. Neuroscience has proven our perceptions shape our reality. And so when we look at astrology and astrological information, if you're trying to futurecast too far out of context, one, it can be a real twisted space in your mind because you're trying to put things in context. And we almost always look to what can go wrong versus what can go right. You got a 50-50 chance of either thing. So why are you looking in the wrong direction? It's got to be wrong. What bad thing could happen? Well, because we like to have a heads up, right? That's why we look for it. But we can equally look for what might go right. Now, training your mind to be observant of yourself, your habits, your mental habits, your emotional habits, your physical habits, can help you notice in the present moment what tension pattern can be released and when we are in our most receptive space. And it is from the present moment that we're making those decisions that help us move into our preferred direction in the future, right? But if we sit and look at the future and we worry about it, we're actually making the decision to maybe not enter into our worst case scenario, but not have as good a time in the future, right? So, being very present with yourself and your consciousness is really important. And when we go to use astrological information, you can't look at it as preordained and predestined. There is a wide spectrum of energy on how that energy expresses, not just low to high, good and bad. We can choose to look at things from a dualistic point of view, from a binary point of view. But if we understand, like sound, okay, a low note is slower in its vibratory rate. A high note is faster in its vibratory rate. Okay, so it isn't about good or bad, right? Is it in tune is another question. So, just like emotions are a vast spectrum, you're never just happy, you're never just sad. There are layers to it. You can feel a little bummed, you can feel in deep embodied grief. You can feel like your heart's being ripped out of your chest. You can feel like nothing will ever be okay again, and you can feel just a little down. Okay, same like with happiness. We can feel over the moon enthusiasm and on top of the world, and we can feel reasonably contented, and we can feel kind of cozy, and that, oh, isn't this just a nice moment? Right? All of that would fall under the realm of happy. There's umbrellas to this. So if you're going to limit yourself to this theoretical astrological knowledge that this sign is always this way, it's always conniving or mean or two-faced or, vengeful or authoritarian or whiny, or you have so limited things, because it's not the truth. It's not how things express. Always. Can sometimes in some circumstances. Astrology shows us the potential astrological weather. We know something will occur, right, in our lives. But as conscious beings who can be deliberate in our consciousness, we have the opportunity to choose where in that spectrum we want to land. Okay. I like neutrality because from neutrality I have a range to go. You can feel neutrally sad, you can be neutrally happy, you can be reasonably contented. I like that space, and from there I can choose, because sometimes we want to feel sad, sometimes we want to feel angry, sometimes we just feel like being miffed for a minute. Why would you deny yourself the ability to experience emotions in an entire range of expression? None of them are inherently good or bad. We've just labeled them with judgments. Okay. So we want to be in our present moment. We want to recognize where our consciousness is. And it's funny because people be like, well, you can't do that all the time. No shit, Sherlock. No shit. Of course you can't do that all the time. Nobody's asking you to be 100% conscious every moment of every day. That would be a ridiculous ask. But you can be there in the morning. Like when you open your eyes, you can train yourself to be like, how do I feel right now? My back hurts. Okay, well, how do I want to feel about that? What kind of day do I want to have? And if you're in a really crappy mood from the minute you wake up because you were ruminating on an ex, or you've been thinking about your heartbreak, or you had some bad news come in, or there was a world event that impacted you, and maybe you saw a video you didn't want to watch, you can ask yourself before you put your feet on the floor and run to the bathroom, you can say, what kind of day do I want to have? And if you're in a really crappy space, you don't want to say, well, I want to be happy, 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 because that's going to be really hard and you're going to slam back into unhappy. But you can say, I would like a reasonably good day. Reasonably good, within the bounds of reason. I want today to be a better day. And then don't think about the other thing. Don't empower the other thought instead of the shitty day that I had yesterday, because you do that, guess what's going to happen? More of what you had. Okay, so you can set your perceptions. And so instead of going, oh my God, the moon is in my 8th house, living by Luna people, people, you know what I'm talking about. The moon is in my eighth house. Oh no. It can be a transit where you can use that energy to do some research. It would be a good day to look at investing. It could be a day where you learn how to harness some of the things you've been studying metaphysically. There's a whole bunch of ways an eighth house transit can manifest itself. You know, likewise, it doesn't. If you have a second house moon transit, it doesn't mean you have to blow your wad and spend all your money. It could be that you actually find new ways to earn a living, or more ways to bring in revenue, or find some self-worth. Might be a time you just work on your money mindset. You're not doomed and destined just to do one thing. That's when I write the horoscopes. That's why I write them a little more metaphorically, because I don't want to tell you, don't get out of bed, it's going to be a shitty day. I don't want to program that. Okay. So we use astrology practically without being superstitious about it. All these superstitions that are circulating all over the internet. It's ridiculous. We are in the 21st century. We can apply our modern understanding with the thousands of years of observation and recorded data collection of astrologers, including modern astrologers. Okay. Because that's what an astrologer does. We watch what's going on, we see the transits, we record information, we record the happenings of the day, and from there we add to our body of knowledge and expand on it. So we stand on the shoulders of many giants, and then we look to how we can apply it. And yeah, we can look at something and go, well, that might be a little crunchy. That might be a little crunchy. That might be a little hard to deal with. I'm going to have to be a lot more present in myself. There's this potential I might really lose my temper, or I might have strong words with someone, or my relationship is shaky and I see that transit heading towards my 5th or my 10th or 7th house. And well, does it mean your relationship is over? No. It might mean your relationship transforms or needs a negotiation or a renegotiation of terms. And it could mean, yes, that you decide to grow and move on. And you can look at what you learned and gained from that experience and have more experience before you get into another agreement, which wouldn't necessarily always be romantic. It might be, you might notice that you overgive in every relationship. Not just your romance. It might be in your business. It might be with clients. It might be with your boss. You'll notice you have themes all over the place. And it tends to be in our own intimate relationships where we learn those lessons kind of the deepest. So don't assume because a transit is coming up, it means it's the end of the world. It's not going to be. There will be significant changes that happen. But why does that have to mean it's a bad thing? Even climate change, which it can be horrendous to think about, right? Me too. It's the one concern I really have. But what if that is exactly what it takes for humanity to pull its head out of our ass collectively? What if it's those things that so interrupt us here on Earth that it impacts the very 1%? And they have to make changes because none of their bunkers are going to work. None of their stuff that they've done that they think gets them ahead will help. Maybe that's exactly what's moving us forward and evolving us. Is it pleasant? No, it's not. Sometimes life isn't. And we can be present in the unpleasantness without identifying with it. And I know that's a hard concept. I used to hate thinking about stuff like that. I used to get really mad when people would say that because I thought they were telling me just, grow up and deal with it, move on, move past it. Nobody's saying you got to do that here. I'm certainly not. I'm saying we can look at where we're at in the moment and say, I have a decision to make about how I respond to this moment. I can lose hope and despair, and everything can go tits up around me. Or I can say, all right, this is what we've got, and this is how I can address it. And some of it will not be as pleasant as other things. And this is how I'm going to deal with that. And this is how I'm going to make the best of it. Because sometimes making the best of it is as good as it gets in the moment. And that isn't nihilism. It's not giving up. It's just understanding. Sometimes we have a moment of unpleasantness, but how we deal with that moment determines the next moment. So stop trying to look too far out. And I say that with experience because I was looking at 2020 heading at me like a freight train from 1997, 96, something like that. I had an old astrologer show me. He said, he said, I'm not going to live to see this, but you will. And you've got kids. You need to be ready for this. Man, I looked at that for years and years, and it terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. And I thought, oh my God, I've got 2 little kids. What the hell? How do I raise them to meet these times? And I did, and it was really weird. People thought I was a really strange person because I was bucking against society, knowing we would have massive systemic change start in 2020. And that's why, though I made some unpopular videos on TikTok saying, hey, it's not over. And people would be like, you're just fear-mongering. You're just giving bad news. I'm like, no. If I wanted to scare you, I could. I'm not giving you the worst case scenarios. I'm giving you the middle of the ground because that's where I've been seeing things land. Okay. But you can actually have a really relatively good experience, even if everything's falling apart around you. And it all comes down to our perceptions of what is going on and where we can see opportunity, maybe the silver lining, or we can find that gold in the stream. Nobody finds giant nuggets, well, unless they're really lucky, and I want to know their Jupiter placement. But in general, when you're panning for gold, you're pulling up the muck and the mud and you're sifting through a sieve into a pan and you find little flakes. And sometimes that's what we have to do in our personal lives. And I bring this up because that moon in Leo, that full moon, February 5th, it presents some startling revelations. Okay, remember, full moons reveal. They show the harvest. And if you've been having stinking thinking or self-esteem issues, I would, from now until then, work on releasing those. Because I think you can be very, very inspired with this full moon. I think you can take yourself and take the bounce and move forward with this full moon. There's always an opportunity. But it takes dedication and deliberation, and you can't just sit back and put your hands together and mutter a few mantras. You can't. That's not going to make stuff happen. You have to be willing to lean into the best of yourself and stop criticizing the parts of you that you find wanting. You've got to believe in you. You've got to lean in to your best qualities. And stop being so damn humble. This is the Leo full moon. You want to find that part of you that makes your heart swell and your chest pump out so that you know what you're good at. And it's not arrogant. It's not arrogant to know what you're good at. And be in that presence of your own best self. And are you a finished work? No, you're all a work in progress. So am I. Stop expecting perfection and saintliness is the only way to get to where you want to go, because that's the big lie. That's a tool of oppression. But you can even say, well, I can make pretty good spaghetti. That's good enough. That's good enough. I'm a really compassionate person. I'm a good listener. That's good enough. It's good enough. You're good enough. You grab onto that, you have a breakthrough. You sit there and you think, well, I'd like to be good at these things, but I'm not. My spaghetti sucks. Man, it's not going to be comfortable. So what if you can't make good spaghetti? I bet you do something else. It doesn't have to be big. It has to be real. And that's how we sit in our present moment and we get real with ourselves. And reality is not always a negative space. Reality is just what is in front of us. Reality from me right now, I've got TikTok streaming. I'm sitting in front of my computer, kind of in the dark, kind of not. I got some lighting going. I've got people listening that I'm not really watching because they're on my blind side. And I'm talking to you with my mic. I'm sitting in a different spot. I'm sitting in the chair I sit and record TikToks. And that's my reality right now. And I feel a lot of energy moving through my body because this stuff matters to me. You knowing you matters to me. Because if more people in the world knew how valuable and precious they are, we would live in a much better space. We wouldn't be fighting for this control. We wouldn't even want to be power adjacent. We would understand that power is kind and generous and uplifts people and ensures people have some kind of security and safety, and love isn't weak. In fact, at the end of the day, love is what gets you through everything. And sometimes that's hard to find when you're looking outside of yourself. In fact, it's almost always difficult to find when you're looking outside of yourself. And yet, what were we all trained to do? And not just because of mommy and daddy, but because of thousands of years of being trained to look outside of ourselves for validation. If you can self-validate even a little bit, even over the small things, you will have a breakthrough on February 5th of 2023. Even if it comes from something that's a little bit uncomfortable. Because we can't grow if we don't find ourselves in the presence of the best parts of ourselves. And even if it means you hit rock bottom, if you can recognize you hit rock bottom and from there make a decision to carry on instead of give up, by God, I think there is nothing more brilliant than that decision. You matter. And when you can find yourself mattering in the present moment, you can look at astrology in a whole different lens than finding silly little archetypes that put you in little square pegs and round holes and cardboard cutouts. Because it's easier to control people when they think there's something wrong with them because they can't fit that. All right, I've given my sermon. I hope to see you at the Full Moon Workshop, and if I don't, that's fine too. I hope you enjoy the podcast. I'll see you next time on the Awake Space Astrology Podcast.